Hi everyone, this is Nim Golkar. Welcome to the show. There's a famous quote, while we cannot control our circumstances, we can always control our attitude. Our very special guest today is someone who has exemplified the art of making positive choices. She's a lady who has always deliberately chosen to look at the bright side of life, no matter what challenges came her way, and there were certainly many. I first met her many years ago in a college classroom at Ruparel College in Mumbai, India, where she was one of my professors who taught psychology with so much enthusiasm and passion that we all eagerly awaited her lectures each week. While there were certain lectures for certain subjects that we occasionally skipped in order to sneak off and have the masala dosa at the college canteen, hers was a class we never missed because she made it so interesting and so much fun. I'm deeply honored to be interviewing and introducing to you all Sushama Sathe. Ma'am, welcome to the show and thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure, Nim. And thank you so much for such a beautiful introduction.
It was all true.
No, and in fact, I want to say that, you won't even imagine how satisfying and rewarding it is for any teacher to see her student doing so well and something so out of the box in her life. So congratulations for that.
Thank you. I'm so humbled about that. Who would have thought all those years ago, right, when we were at Ruparel, that we'd be sitting here face to face and I'd have the opportunity to interview you. So I'm super excited. And there's lots of stuff I want to ask you today, lots of questions. But how about we start with you telling our viewers a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, that kind of thing.
Sure. So as you have already mentioned, working in Mumbai, Ruparel College for 15 years as a lecturer, me and my family, we decided to migrate to Australia. So we came down here and it took me a couple of years to get my registration done with the Board of Psychology here in Australia. And then I started my career in 2006. Currently, I'm working with special need kids as counselor. And I work with these children who have vision impairment, hearing impairment, and intellectual disability. I also work in one of the private universities as a student counselor, mainly dealing with issues of migrant students. And as you can imagine, during the COVID times, it's very hard. They are suffering a lot. So it's a very rewarding job there as well. And last but not the least, I have my private practice in a few of the medical centers.
Doing so many wonderful things and as always making it look easy, which I'm sure it's not. But let me start by asking you, ma'am, you came to Australia when you were nearing 40. An age at which most people are comfortably settled in their careers, professions, and lives in general. So even for those who migrate at a much younger age, there are lots of challenges they have to face. So I can only imagine how difficult it would have been for you and your family. Would you like to share with our viewers a little bit about the challenges you faced when you first migrated?
Look, any transition is difficult. Any change for pretty much everyone, I would say, is hard. Some challenges are more difficult than the other. And I would say migrating to another country is one of the biggest challenges. And I would add a little bit to that yes, if you migrate or if you choose to relocate yourself to another country at a younger age, maybe adapting to the new culture, new lifestyle is slightly easier. Whereas, when you migrate, say around the age that we migrated, it's a bit harder. And one of the reasons could be that, you kind of get used to using the psychology term, I would say you get conditioned to one lifestyle, working style, and then you have to decondition yourself when you relocate. And then again, you have to recondition yourself to the new style. So that's one of the biggest challenges. Another thing I would say that at a slightly senior age when you migrate, the challenge is that you are competing with local young generation. So like, fresh graduates or kids who have been born and brought up here, who have gone through the education system. And then when you're competing with them, it could be a slightly daunting process. And therefore, that's another bigger challenge that I faced because, as I said, like, once I got my registration done, most of my colleagues were young girls or boys, and therefore, but it was good because, I got to really learn a lot from them. But my husband had a very positive attitude about this. So he said that he was a biggest cricket fan, as you can imagine, being an Indian. So what he said was that, look, we have had our first innings back home. So this is our second innings. So let's see how we go. But being Indian and fan of Sachin Tendulkar, you want to have a century in the second innings as well.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
Look, like you rightly said, when you come at a slightly older age, you are competing with people who are raised through the system. So it can be quite daunting, like you said, and quite challenging. One interesting thing I've noticed is that when you're starting from scratch in your career in a foreign country, it often means that you have to take a step down, whether that's from a salary perspective or from a job designation perspective. And that can be quite bruising for the ego. So it's something that a lot of new migrants struggle with. So what advice would you give to people who have newly migrated, who are not able to find a job at the same level they held back in their home country?
First and foremost, I would say that don't compare the opportunities that you get in the new country with what you had previously. So like, if that comparison is constantly going on in your head, then it's really going to be difficult to make a choice. So I would say that don't consider it as stepping down. Say, step sideways, explore something new, something that you have never come across, or think outside the box. And I have experienced it firsthand that if you get a local experience and that goes on your resume, I think then many more doors open for you. So take the first opportunity or something that you think, yes, I can do this, and just jump into it. Put your foot into the door because, once you do that, then I think the later journey becomes slightly easier.
So true. I've actually read somewhere that opportunity dances with those already on the dance floor. So like you said, it's so important that when opportunity knocks, you take it up and see where it leads you. Now, having said that, I also read somewhere that we often don't realize how strong we can be in life until being strong is the only option we're left with. I know that a few years ago you faced an incredibly difficult personal challenge. Do you want to just briefly tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I don't know how well I can narrate the time because it was the hardest time in my life. But so as I mentioned that we migrated and then we were just finding our feet, both me and my husband. We found full-time jobs. Kids were comfortable in their studies, bought a first house, very exciting time. And he was diagnosed with cancer and we were given just few months. So that was very hard, but at the same time, as I said, that he had a very positive attitude. He was a fighter. So we decided that, we are going to do everything in our capacity to make it easier for him as well as for our kids. Around the same time, just a year ago, I had lost both my parents. So it was like, the tripod of my life was lost literally within 16, 18 months. And it doesn't end there. The full-time job that I had around that time, I lost that job in next 2 months.
Oh my goodness, that is hard. So what helped you, ma'am, through this difficult phase?
I would say first and foremost, of course, my family. I have an amazing family. Not just my 2 sons, but I have a beautiful extended family. And I was fortunate to have this extended family in and around Australia. So they supported me a lot. But most importantly, I have to mention that I had amazing friends and people from the community During those 8-10 months, there were hundreds of things that were just getting done. And though I was having my own battles, they were supporting in every possible way. So, and every tiny bit counted. So I had that community support, friend support. Apart from that, after the incident, I really needed to look within, find the strength to come back on track and start the journey all over again. And the help can come from any direction. So I was given a book, probably you must have heard about it, Option B, from Sheryl Sandberg. You don't want to think about having an option B for your own life. Sometimes we think about option B in terms of career or option B for buying a car, but option B for your own life, you never think about that. But then what I learned from that book was you don't have to change your destination where you had planned to go. The only thing is that probably you have to take a different route now. You have to take a different mindset, and maybe you have to take a different path which you had never anticipated. And that helped me a lot. And I'm also going to be very honest here that being a psychologist, I was working with few doctors who noticed that I was not coping. And when they advised, I didn't shy from taking medical treatment. I went on to medication for a while. I took whatever the professional help that was needed. But then ultimately I found the strength within me. Thank God, the opportunity that God gave me to work with these special need kids. I mentioned in my introduction that I'm working in an institute where I work with these special need kids. So when I got this job in few months' time, and I went there and I looked at all those beautiful kids, some with vision impairment, some with hearing impairment, some on wheelchairs, but they all had smile on their face. All the carers, teachers, their parents who were committed to help them. It was like a completely game changer opportunity for me. I started thinking as to what am I crying for? I'm still an able-bodied person. I still have my educational qualifications. I still have my beautiful family with me, and I shouldn't think that in any way I'm disadvantaged, because those kids were always motivated to learn. They were ready to try new things. They never give up, and that never ever give up attitude I think I got from there.
How sweet. It just goes to show that happiness is a choice, isn't it? And it's a very deliberate decision. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. We were having a chat on the phone a few days ago, and you mentioned something quite interesting, which sort of links to what you just spoke about. And that is that a lot of people, particularly women, are at a loss when they lose their spouse. And they often find themselves clueless about everyday practicalities like their finances, investments, and things like that. So many people wait till there's a wake-up call, only to find out that everyday practicalities are something they've never really thought about. What advice would you give, or what practical life skills can people cultivate over the years instead of waiting for some kind of wake-up call to happen and then figure it out?
Look, how I mentioned that community as a whole had supported me a lot. So after a few days, me and few of my friends, we decided that, we really need to share this experience. Giving back to the community, learning from your own experience. I think I wanted to really share, and as you said, that don't wait for some calamity or some major thing to happen to prepare yourself for the worst. So we held a function, and I asked this question to around, say, 150 people who were in the auditorium as to simple question like, how many of you have decided to or have done your will? And I was shocked to see that not even 50% of the hands went up. So it's one of the essential things that one has to do, but you just tend to put it off. You kind of don't want to talk about will, because as if we are discussing death or something that we don't want to talk about. But it's a very important thing to do for various reasons. Most importantly, what I learned was, if those legal aspects are taken care of, then you have more strength to focus on what is more important. Because, if those things are going to bother you more, then you lose track. And also the loved ones that you have, they have enough to deal with the loss. On top of that, if there are some complications in the legal matters, it just worsens the process. So a simple thing like getting a will done. Yeah. And in the process, I also learned that different countries have different laws. So like coming from India, I learned that, you really need to have a separate will. Back home there, you have to have a separate will here, because most of us, we have some assets there, assets here. So that was one thing. As you mentioned, majority of us, we are working women, or we are educated, so we have a career. We are financially independent, so to say, but we are not really financially savvy. So what I mean by that is, just again speaking from my own experience, I never really put my head into like investment or major financial decisions or insurance, banking stuff, like, how do you split your mortgage, I didn't want to go there because my husband was managing it, and I said that, I have a few other things to look after. But when I was thrown in the deep end, I really had to start from the scratch. So I would say that it's not about interfering, but it's about being knowledgeable, aware about what are the things, what you need to do. So legal aspect, financial aspect. And last but not the least, I would say that, do pay attention to your own personal interests. Like, have a life of your own, because very often, particularly Indian women, like, they devote their entire life to their families, and they tend to lose track of where they are going, like, what they want to do with their own life. So I would probably say that these are the three important things.
Fabulous. Like they say, whenever there's turbulence in the air and you're on a plane, to first put the oxygen mask on yourself before you do it on your loved ones. Because if you're not, functioning in optimal health, how do you look after? Now, they say that time heals all wounds. But I'm sure that there are many moments when you have to deal with loneliness. How do you navigate that space?
It's a tough one. But I'll just use the word from cognitive behavior therapy, which I practice in my profession. If you use the word loneliness, which is indicating or is trying to make you feel like you are abandoned or you are isolated, then it's very hurtful. But if you're looking at this situation where you're kind of left alone, but you look at this as where you are going to be in charge of your own self. You are going to make your own decisions, and you're responsible for everything and every choice that you make. And instead of making you feel weaker, if you think it in this term that, it is my life and it is me who has to now drive my life, being in control, it makes you feel empowered. So I do have those moments, but as I said, I reach out to people, or I go to my passion, which is literature. I like reading literature, poetry. If possible, if I get time, I like to write a little bit, and that is the solution, I would say, that I have found. That's how I keep my focus back on track.
So important to cultivate interests for yourself. That's so true. Now, you're someone who has demonstrated time and time again that age is just a number. Now, aging, growing older, is something that terrifies a lot of people. What tips can you give for aging gracefully?
Wow. Look, I would say that when we talk about aging, the first thought that comes to your mind is about health. we think that at certain age we are going to have some medical issues, or there are certain things that you can't do because you have crossed 40 or you have crossed 50. Look, you have to listen to your body, because your body is your best friend. It tells you what you can and what you can't do. But if you are going to look at age as something which is going to put boundaries, then it's a problem. But if you look at age as something which is going to give you more wisdom, it's going to help you to make better choices, then age does not really matter. And most importantly, you can age gracefully if you are mentally very active. So if you, many of us, we see that, we are quite careful about looking after our body, but if you keep looking after your mental health, I would say aging becomes easier. And mental health should not be confused with mental illness. I'm not talking about the mental health issues that we deal in psychotherapy. I'm talking about looking after your mental health, which is going to keep you focused, keep you happy, and live a life which is fulfilling. And there are so many examples around us. If you look at that, there are many, and not just women, but even men who start even doing their PhD after retirement. I'll give you an example of my mother-in-law back home in India, where the adversities are way different than what we have here. She decided to go and learn driving car at the age of 60 or 61. And we were like, why do you need to do that? But she said, no, that was one of the dreams that I always had, and now I can, so why not? And she did it. So age was not a barrier for her. So I think it is all in your mind. So if you look after your mental health, age is not going to matter at all.
That is such an uplifting story, and more power to her and others like her. That's amazing. It has been such a pleasure talking to you and just hearing about your incredible journey. But we can't wrap up until I ask you, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I think the best way is to shoot me an email, because of my profession, very often I don't even look at my phone or it's on silent. So just my first name, Sushama_SATHE@hotmail.com is my Sushama_Sathe@hotmail.com. So send me an email, and if possible, I would really love to help anybody.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. I was inspired all those years ago at Ruparel College when I sat in your lectures for psychology, and I'm left equally, if not more, inspired today after hearing your amazing journey. So thank you so much, ma'am, for joining me today.
And my best wishes to you, Nim, in all your adventures and the new projects that you keep coming up with.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, for watching. I look forward to seeing you again with yet another episode of the Achievers Lounge. Thank you. Bye for now.